Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to be going over some ranged units, specifically archers, how to micro them, some unique mechanics, and their honor upgrades, veterancy, which ones are good, which ones aren't, and their placement in battles. So let's go ahead and jump right in to the honor tree, or the tech tree, as I like to call it. So the way it works is these green and gray archer units just aren't effective in any way, shape, or form. I really wouldn't recommend using these in any battles. I do think you're better off using a gray or green melee unit, just because these don't have the damage output to be effective. And you're better off using the gray or green melee units as cannon fodder, so you can push a point, they'll soak up some damage, and they'll do just as much as the archer units, except they can actually fight or push a point. Now, I see this mistake a lot. A lot of people who are starting the game see the Lombos and think they're cool because of their range and stuff. They're not effective in any way, shape, or form. The Vassal Longbowmen are purely a waste of honor. So I've spent time maxing them. I have some doctrines on them. I'll show you in my barracks in a second. And I fully honor upgraded these. They're just nowhere near effective as the Imperial Archers. Their damage output isn't as good. And when it comes to the range, there's some fundamental issues. So the AI targeting will actually only target... Well, actually here it's easier to show. I'm searching immediately, my bad. So the AI targeting will actually only go up to 90 in this game. So if they're outside of that 90 range, even though this unit can technically shoot further than that, their AI won't automatically target it. Their kit isn't effective at all. The Overwatch is basically just the same thing as your area attack, as you see with other archers, except this one is on a 6-second cooldown. And their cover fire just isn't used at all. It's not very effective. It doesn't really do anything. The main problem I have with this unit, honestly, is at max range, which is what they're supposed to shoot at, 117 base, 121 if you have the 5 extra meter doctrine. Only 3 or 4 out of your entire volley will actually hit something. So you're shooting off 24 arrows, and every volley you're only hitting 3 to 4 of those shots. For a unit that's supposed to be designed to shoot things at long range, and only 3 of your shots hitting, I mean, it's just very lackluster, to say the least. They don't do as much damage as the Imperial Archers with their Botkin arrows, and their pen obviously isn't as high. Again, I wouldn't recommend going for these. The doctrines you're going to want to put on archers in general is your piercing damage, your armor pen, your piercing defense, and accuracy or damage. The reason you put piercing defense on is because you'll get into archer on archer fights a lot, and you're not really worried about slashing your blunt, because if any melee troops get close to them, your archers are pretty much dead anyway. Now when it comes to honor archers, Vanguards are interesting. They do okay damage, but they don't really do enough to be effective. The Prefecture Archers have a really high fire rate. Their accuracy isn't bad, but they just don't do enough damage to be effective. The Imperial Archers are really effective for a high tier archer unit. Their Botkin arrows allows them to do as much damage as a musket or a Pavis unit at while having the ability to micro, to shoot over walls, to have the longer range and the advantage in some of these battles, and really apply that suppressive fire. They're able to pen high armor units like Iron Reapers and still get off 2400 to 2700 damage ticks, which is insane. The Incendiary Archers aren't bad because of their fire arrows, but they really don't do a whole lot to high tier troops. The best archer unit I would recommend in sieges is actually the one you get from season 2, the Mongolians. and that's going to be your Namkin archers. So these are a little lackluster with their ammo supply. If you get the 50% ammo doctrine, it fixes that. Their initial damage isn't great. It's also not bad. What really makes the Namkin archers effective is the bleed. So the way the bleed mechanic works is you can stack it up a bunch of times and you can see some insane tick damage off of it. And just applying that to a hero or a unit is really going to hurt them or damage them. So let's go ahead and get into some mechanics here. The position you want to be playing archers in sieges is suppressive fire. If you can get them on a wall or any elevation in general, they actually get bonus damage because of it. So let's start with the Imperial Archers. So the Imperial Archers have Bodkin arrows, which allow them to pierce, but their rate of fire is reduced. I'd recommend going hybrid in their veterancy tree, because what that will allow you to do is pick up, it'll take off 20% of that rate of fire reduction, and it will basically do a lot of damage. So if you take that 20% off that 25, they're basically shooting at the same rate, but they're having bodkin arrows, which allows them to pierce and do high amounts of damage. The damage output here is really good. We just saw a 3,900 damage tick. They're able to pierce through and do a lot of damage to even high tier units and not just low tier ones. So we can't see it very well here, but you can actually shoot outside of the range of that blue area and get some damage in. The problem is you can only do it up to 10 meters outside that area of effect, and your damage is going to be halved. But if you're in a tight pinch or you just want to apply some suppressive fire, it's pretty good. You can press V with them. That'll allow them to AI target. That's not bad if you're moving up with your team and sieges. And they'll do some suppressive fire here and really lighten the load for your melee units. What I would recommend is on certain maps, there's a lot of cool spots where you can actually have them on supply point and shooting, as we see here, and that'll allow them to have infinite ammo. They'll never run out. So if you find a good spot in a siege for that, you definitely want to do it. A lot of the times, you'll be fighting archer on archers. They'll have some on the ground and you'll be up on the walls. I'd really recommend trying to take out their archers first so you don't have any competition and you're in a safe spot to really unload on the melee troops. Let's go ahead and move on to the Namkin archers. So the Namkin archers, you kind of have to complete seasonal challenges for them. Because it's a blue unit, the seasonal challenges weren't bad. It's the season 2 units. So as soon as you get these guys, you always want to have the bleed on by pressing 2. So because these are low tier units, they're going to do some decent damage. You'll see 2,000, 1,000, 300. We don't really see the bleed take effect here because, again, those are gray archers we're fighting. So you're going to wipe them pretty easily. Never use gray archers. Here we go, some real units. So what you'll see here is some red numbers. That'll mean the bleed is taking effect. That can stack up to 10 times and you'll get a 2,000 damage bleed mark. As you can see, it's stacking up pretty quickly here. We're already seeing some 500 numbers. But if the melee gets close to your archers, they're not going to do very well. As you can see, they're just going through. They're killing a lot of my archers. If it's a real player controlling these, he'll X them on top of your archers and just demolish them. Here it's not too much of an issue because these are AI and really weak. Rat and archers, I didn't cover. So they're not a bad archer unit. They're interesting because the cool thing about them is they also have poison. It's not as effective as the bleed when it comes to DPS, but it'll actually, once it stacks up to 5 times, reduce the enemy's damage output by 50%. So every time they get a stack of poison on the enemy unit or hero, it's reducing their damage by 10%, and that can stack up to 5 times. Also, since they have the rat and armor, their piercing and slashing defense is a lot higher, so they are the ideal counter archer for a blue unit. So if you're looking for a counter archer, I'd highly recommend these guys over the longbows. I know the argument is I have the range, I can hit the archers without them hitting me back. But again, if only 3 of your arrows are landing, it's not going to be very effective in any form. The only way I've seen the longbows perform pretty well is in a closer position, where if I'm doing that and putting them closer, the range isn't really effective, so I really want to be using Imperial archers anyway. You're never really going to see archer units in T-Wars just because they're not as effective as direct fire or these other melee high tier units that you're going to be seeing in territory wars. So I think most housemates and most leadership will agree with me in any clan that you never ever want to bring archers to T-Wars. There are very few exceptions to that rule, which is what I would call a niche role. There might be a map where you have a really good spot, and if you have a longbow player who's good with archers, you might want to have them bring Imperials. But other than that, you're never really going to use them in a T-War. However, I love using them in siege matches, and they're really fun. If you want a good siege match archer, I'd recommend doing the Mongolian challenges in Season 2, because the Namkins do a lot of damage with their bleed, and they're only 180 leadership in your warband. So we went over the basic doctrines you want to have with them. I decked out my Imperial Archers with some damage. Breakthrough's really nice on them. Piercing damage. And I have piercing defense and ammo. I'm not worried about the pen on Imperial Archers because with the bodkin arrows they can pen through anything. But on other archers, I'd always recommend slapping a piercing armor pen on them. This is a pretty generic setup if you don't have any good doctrines for them. You can replace the 5 weapons with 250 health. It won't help a lot, but they might be able to survive an extra tick of bleed or something, you never know. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this video helps you on how to use archers, where you should be putting them. And definitely don't bring them to T-Wars.